Hello everybody, I just finished the RuPaul's Drag Race Season 18 finale. Mikey Meeks just won. It is like 10 o'clock at night, but I have to talk about A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I just finished A Court of Thorns and Roses, ACOTAR, if you will, yesterday, and I've been writing notes on it as I've been reading it. So I have a lot of things to say about ACOTAR, but first, as always, we should start with a short summary. So this summary is just coming right off the dome because I'm not going to research a summary. I'm sure I'm going to miss some important parts. Refresh my memory in the comments. So it starts with Feyre. I think I'm pronouncing her name right. And she is 19 years old and her family is very poor. So it starts with Feyre in the woods and she's hunting. She sees like a really big wolf and she's like, you know what? I'm going to kill this wolf because I don't have any other food. She also killed a deer. She's like, we're starving. We're freezing cold. We're so poor. Maybe I can go to the market and sell the wolf's pelt and, get some money and, make other uses for the wolf. So she kills it. Her family, she explains, they used to be wealthy. Her dad used to be like a very prominent figure, like kind of an elite figure, but they lost all of their money and also their mom is dead. So it's her sister Elaine, her sister Nesta, and her dad, whose name I don't think they mentioned, and they all live in this tiny little cabin. Feyre pretty much does all of the work to keep her family alive. Her dad has been crippled. The other sisters don't really do anything, and Nesta is kind of like the pretty but mean and shallow one. She's the oldest one, and she's always like talking down on Feyre and starting trouble, and she's annoyed and she's very angry. Elaine is kind of more, she kind of in the beginning is more simple. She's kind of like a simple, innocent, sweet sister who Feyre feels like she needs to protect. So anyways, they go to the market the next day. Feyre's like, I'm selling this wolf pelt. You guys are not like get any money because I know you're going to fuck around and buy something stupid with the money and we need to do important things. She sells it. And then the next day at her cabin, this big giant like lion-esque kind of creature comes to the door and is like, you killed my friend. And my friend was the wolf. He was also a fairy in disguise. And so now I'm going to kill you. Or if I don't kill you, you also have the option to come live with me in my palace. So Feyre thinks that they have kind of like all these misconceptions and stereotypes, I guess, about fairies. So one stereotype is that she thinks that fairies are very violent and evil. There are these people that come to the market and they are like part of this kind of cult where they go off to live with the fairies and everyone's like, oh my god, you're so stupid, fairies are gonna kill and eat you, and they're very deceptive and they're tricky. And another one is that she thinks that fairies can't lie, that they're incapable of lying. So she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna live with you and protect my family. And so her dad is like, Feyre, if you're leaving, if you ever find yourself into a better spot, don't ever come back to this town because this place sucks. There's nothing for you here. So she runs away. And then she goes over the wall, which is like a big thing that separates the mortal land from the fairyland. So she's in the fairyland. She's in the spring court, and the big lion guy actually turns out to be Tamlin, who is a fairy. And something important about the fairies in the spring court, they're all wearing masks, which will be revealed later. Fast forward, I'm going to skip a lot of important parts, but basically Feyre gets to live in this beautiful mansion. She's very suspicious of everybody. She meets Tamlin's good friend. His name is Lucien. Also, a major central character is Alice, who is kind of like a housemaid person. Eventually, throughout time, as she's living there, she's realizing like fairies are not who I thought they would be, and she's starting to feel guilty for killing Tamlin's friend, who was a wolf. And she also is starting to learn through conversations with Tamlin and Lucien that things are kind of like not quite right with the realm, if you will. Tamlin's like, there's this curse on the land. I'm magical. We all used to be a lot more powerful and strong, but basically there's like this disease going across the land that's stripping everybody of their magic. And his good friend Lucian, he's actually from the Autumn Court, but he came to come live in the Spring Court because of some, mysterious drama. Everything's very mysterious. She doesn't get a whole lot of details, but she's starting to become more comfortable. And she's starting to maybe kind of fancy Tamlin. And so, yes, the rumors are true. ACOTAR is known for kind of being a smut book, but I have to set the record straight for all the men out there who want to know and all the haters. There is only one sex scene in the entire book. Halfway through, you got to read through like 200 pages to even get there. Yes, it has a little bit of smut. Let women enjoy a little tiny bit of smut, because there's barely any of it in there. It's mostly storytelling, and it is a very good and very interesting story. And Game of Thrones, are you kidding me? They're fucking everybody every 2.5 pages in the book. I'm guessing I never read the book, but in every single episode of Game of Thrones, somebody's fucking. So please don't be a hater. Anyways, to continue on with the story. Eventually, Feyre is starting to fall for Tamlin. Okay. Another thing that happens is there's this big spring festival thing that Tamlin has to be part of. I will skip the details about this crazy event, the spring thing that Tamlin has to do that Feyre's not invited to. If you know, you know. But so she also runs into Rhysand, but she doesn't know it's Rhysand yet. He's just this handsome man. He's wearing all black. He's beautiful and very handsome, and he has beautiful violet eyes, almost like an Edward Cullen kind of figure, if you will. So she meets him there. He's very mysterious. Tamlin and Feyre basically start falling in love. Throughout the story, Feyre keeps encountering these really horrific, scary monsters and a lot of violence. So she encounters like a creature that looks like her dad, and she's like, oh, my dad came to rescue me. She goes out to see him. It's not her dad. It's just an illusion from this fairy monster thing that Tamlin has to go kill. Tamlin constantly in the first half of the book, he has to just like keep leaving. He's like not in the mansion. He's just gone because he has to go hunt down creatures that are being sent. And she starts to get more and more information. She's like, this person has been sending these creatures to try to test us. And another major event that happens is a fairy, like Tamlin has to go rescue this other fairy, and so he's been mutilated. His wings have been taken off of him, and he's coming to the mansion late one night, and he's dying, and Tamlin is trying to save him, but he's gonna die. And so this is a really huge turning point for Feyre, where she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was ever had these false stereotypes about fairies. Here's this innocent fairy, he's begging for his life, he's going to die. And she is very affected by this, and it's very emotional. And so she witnesses his death for the first time, and she really starts to realize like something is happening. This mysterious character turns out to be Amarantha. And I have to stop right here. The name Amarantha is so bad. It's comparable to Renesmee from Twilight, but I honestly am going to venture to say that Amarantha is worse than Renesmee. Amarantha is such a terrible, stupid, dumb name for anybody, let alone a villain. Amarantha does not sound like the name of a villain. It is a terrible name. I don't think I can forgive Sarah J. Maas ever for making the main villain's name Amarantha. It's so stupid. She's like, what if Samantha, but also Amanda? Now consider that. It is so stupid. And when I first read it, I was like, I have to be reading this wrong, or it has to be like not pronouncing it right in my head. It has to be different. It is such a dumb name, and it infuriates me that that's all she could come up with. It's like almost my main criticism of the book. It is so stupid and so bad, and it cheapens the whole thing to me. I don't know why names have such a big thing for me, but that's a terrible name. Anyway, so Amarantha is the one who's cursing the lands. She's been causing trouble. Rhysand comes to the mansion. He threatens Tamlin and Feyre, and he's like, Amarantha like wants you, she's pissed off, something's got to happen. And then Tamlin's like, all right, we got to send you home. And this is where they have sex for the first time. And yeah, I was kicking my little feet. So then she gets sent back. Tamlin puts a glamour on them, which is something that's kind of explored a lot in the book. And so her family thinks that she's been living with this well-off, wealthy aunt. She's been taking care of her, and that they just happen to run into a lot of money because now they live in a beautiful mansion. They have more rooms and more food than they could ever need. Her sisters seem happy, especially Elaine is very happy. They're happy to see her, and they're like, oh my god, we're so glad that you came back from seeing your aunt. So Tamlin has just been taking care of her family the whole time. Her dad's like, let's throw a ball. She also talks to Nesta. Nesta's still like kind of pissy and moody, not really talking to anybody. And then finally Nesta reveals that she's like, I was a very angry person. I think I'm just angry because our dad never really did anything. So the glamour didn't really work on Nesta. She still remembers the whole event of Fairy taking off by the fairy, about her killing the fairy. She remembers the whole thing. She doesn't, fall for the glamour like her dad and her sister Elaine do. And so she talks to Fairy about it, and she says, I'm really just angry that our dad never really did a whole lot to help us, and really it was you who took care of us. And even though I didn't realize it at the time, like, it was you who took care of us when nobody else would. And so they kind of bond over that. Feyre just has this terrible, terrible feeling that something isn't right. She knows that Tamlin is in danger. She knows that something is wrong. And so she feels like she has to leave home. When she's about to leave home, the glamour is broken, which I really wish that it wasn't. So the glamour is broken for Elaine and her dad. And I really just wish it hadn't been. I really think it would have been stronger if the secret of what actually happened to Feyre was just something between herself and Nesta, and it would have made their bond stronger. It would have made me just, I think, connect with Nesta more. But I think I just would have liked to have seen the dynamic play out more between her sister and dad are never any of the wiser, and they just get to be protected, and they don't even know just how good they have it. I think that would have been a lot more interesting. Feyre, she leaves, she goes back over the wall to the Spring Court, and the palace is in shambles. She runs into Alice. She's like, Alice, what's going on? Alice is like, oh my god, girl, you could have saved us all. You could have lifted the curse, but she didn't. And so she explains, and this is what also really pisses me off. I'm going to get into it, but there's a huge exposition dump here between like the whole chapter, maybe chapter and a half, where Alice just exposition dump explains everything. So she explains there was a curse. Amarantha got pissed at Tamlin like several years ago, several decades ago, 50 years ago almost, because there's this whole drama. So Amarantha's sister, also a fairy, she fell in love with a human man, and this human man betrayed her by killing her. And so that's what kind of had been fueling this war that has been mentioned in the book between humans and fairies. And so there was always like conflict, there was always like racism and prejudice happening between the fairies and the humans, but this really set Amarantha off, and so she went crazy. She joined this big, huge human fairy war. So then she throws this big ball. Tamlin says something very offensive to her about her sister, and so she becomes so enraged that she puts a curse on him. During this ball, where everybody has the mask on, that is where Amarantha tricks everybody, and she curses Tamlin and his whole court to be cursed wearing the masks, for everybody to lose their magic until you get a human woman to fall in love with you and to say that she loves you. You're going to be cursed. So Feyre was supposed to be the one that was going to lift the curse finally after all this time. Instead of saying that she loved him, she didn't. And she just kind of returned home, and she was like, I want to express my feelings to him, but it's too late. Now everybody's gone under the mountain. Dun, dun, dun. So Amarantha has taken everybody captive under the mountain, and Rhysand also is kind of like a victim of this as well. Pretty much all of the other courts in the land are a victim to this, and they're all trapped under the mountain with Amarantha. And so she's like, okay, I have to go save Tamlin and everybody else. I have to go under the mountain. She does. And then this is where the book, I think, is really at its strongest. So the last maybe like quarter of the book, Feyre is in under the mountain, and she has to endure all of these tasks to try to win Tamlin back. So the first thing she can do, Amarantha's like, okay, if you solve my riddle, you can set everybody free and everybody gets to go instantly. And she tells her the riddle and she can't figure it out, which is, oh my God, the answer to the riddle was immediately obvious to me. It pissed me off so much that Feyre was like, oh my God, I don't know the answer to the riddle. I don't know the answer to the riddle. The answer to the riddle was love, obviously. It just makes sense. Maybe you can say, like, of course I would understand it because I've seen TV shows before, I've read media before, and Feyre is illiterate. She can't read. She's never experienced, like, basic storytelling and problem solving, so maybe that's why she couldn't figure it out. But oh my God, it made me so mad that she didn't even guess. So anyway, she has to do these 3 tasks. Okay, so her first task is really cool. She has to fight this big worm, and everybody thinks that the worm is going to eat her, and all the fairies under the mountain are betting on her that she's going to get eaten, but she defeats it. And it's kind of like the worm from Dune, where it just has a bunch of teeth and it can't see. She gets severely injured by the worm, by the way. Rhysand comes to visit her. He's like, I'm rooting for you and we should make a deal. And so she's like, what are you talking about? She's going to die, though, probably, if she doesn't get help from this worm attack. And so she makes this deal, and Rhysand is like, okay, if you come see me in my court once a week, every month for the rest of your life, I will heal you and I will try to help you during these trials. Of course, she refuses at first because she loves Tamlin, but then she's like, okay, I agree, I need to get healed because I'm gonna die. He heals her, and then he puts this like permanent tattoo thing on her hand to kind of like mark that she's like his property. Fucked up, not cool. Rhysand is like doing this weird thing throughout the whole time that she's under the mountain, where she takes like this potion. It's like this fairy wine that makes her blackout drunk and she can't remember anything and she acts a fool. And he does this to like make her act a fool in front of everybody and like do these sexy dances and dress in these really skimpy outfits. And he does it in front of Tamlin to make Tamlin very upset because Tamlin's there under the mountain. He's trapped by Amarantha. Amarantha like wants him to be her lover and to marry him, and he's like, no. Task number 2 is that Feyre has to save Lucien, who's also there, from being impaled by like these hot spikes, and so she can't read.
Baby, you can't read.
Nobody knows that she can't read except for Rhysand figures it out, and so she has to answer this riddle, and she has to like pull the lever to answer the riddle to save Lucien. She's freaking out because he's gonna die and she can't read, and she's so embarrassed and ashamed of herself. And then she realizes that the tattoo on her hand that Rhysand has given her is what is helping guide her towards the right answer. So she saves Lucien in the nick of time. That was her second trial. She lives. Same thing happens again, where Rhysand causes her to, you know, continue acting a fool. But also, so through each of these like nights and tasks, Rhysand reveals more and more to her, and they have like a weird kind of like friendship thing going on. It's like a, you know, a frenemies thing. So Rhysand is like, listen, I'm only making you act a fool because I really want to make Tamlin upset. I don't like Amarantha. Everybody calls me Amarantha's whore. I'm stuck here. And so it's kind of implied strongly that Amarantha is kind of has Rhysand as like her sex slave, basically. And so to keep his people safe from the night court, he's just kind of putting up with it. She took his powers and everybody else's powers, so he's just like, listen, I want to make Tamlin as mad as possible, and then maybe that will cause Tamlin to like snap out of it and try to take revenge and try to figure something out. I'm rooting for you. Yes, I'm kind of evil and I'm kind of mischievous, but I'm rooting for you, and we need your help. Finally, the last task, Amarantha says, okay, in front of you there are 3 fairies. You have to kill all of them. You have to stab them in the heart with your own bare hands, and then you know, the trials will be over. And this is very hard. And she's like, the whole point is like, well, it was so easy for you to kill a fairy in the first place, so it should be easy for you to kill these random people. All of them are begging for their lives as they're unmasked one by one. And then finally, she gets to the third and final fairy that she has to stab. And guess who it is? Guess who it is? Guess who it is? It's Tamlin. And so she goes to stab Tamlin. She knows that he's going to be okay, but basically he has a heart of stone, which I'm not going to lie, this part was like also like, it feels like it was kind of just thrown in there last minute, because yeah, they kind of hinted they had a heart of stone, but why does he have a heart of stone? Like it wasn't explained very well. It would have been cooler if we got a little bit more information about that. But he has like a little heart of stone, so when she stabs him, he's not gonna die, he'll be fine. And so she does it. She's like, all right, I won, so I have to let everybody free. And Amarantha's like, nope, actually, I said that I would eventually let everybody free, but not right away. So who knows when I'm going to let everybody free? I don't care. And everybody gets pissed off. So all of the fairies are mad. Rhysand is mad. Tamlin's mad. Everybody's mad. Amarantha's like torturing what's her name, Feyre, one last time. She's gonna kill her. She's like bending her in half. And this is really cool too, because I feel like Sarah J. Maas really did a good job of like this kind of like a body horror, this like Exorcist style, freaky, like bones breaking, blood coming out of your mouth type of horror to Feyre. And so she's about to die. Tamlin gets so upset that he kills her and he regains his power. Also because I forgot to mention, Feyre solves the riddle like 2 seconds before she's about to die. The answer is love. Duh. So she figures it out. She says the answer to the riddle is love. Tamlin gets his powers back. He kills her. He like, I think in my reading of it, decapitates her and stabs like an iron sword through her skull. And all of the other fairies are like, thank you. And so Tamlin's crying. She's gonna die. He's like, I love you. You're about to die. Damn, shorty. And all of the fairies of the other courts, they all come up and they like have this little like light thing in their palm, and they all like place it down on her. And then Feyre wakes up and she's a fairy now. What? So she wakes up, she lives, she's a fairy, and that is basically the end of the story. Then Feyre and Tamlin get to go back to the Spring Court, and that's how the first story ends. First, I need to start from the end with my criticisms. I have some criticisms to say, but I do want to say overall, I like the book. I already got A Court of Mist and Fury, ACOMAF, if you will. I already have A Court of Mist and Fury. I'm already going to read it. I like it overall, but I have to do a little bit of light criticism. The fact that Feyre gets turned into a fairy in the end is very reminiscent of Twilight. The problem of her being mortal with an immortal boyfriend is that she will eventually grow old and die, and what happens with the relationship. And also, if, you know, the main character about to die in the end, if she dies, what happens to the story? And so the simple solution is we just make her immortal, which is exactly what happened to Bella in Twilight. Now she gets turned into a vampire. Boom, all of the problems are solved. I will say the story overall does have stakes, but something that annoyed me about this ending was it just felt like we went through all of this and we went through all of these kind of like moral conundrums about what will happen when she grows old and the love that she has for Tamlin. And even though she knows she's going to grow old and dies, she still cares about Tamlin. Even though Tamlin knows she's going to die and they can't live forever, he still loves her. I think that's part of what makes their love story beautiful. And then it's just kind of taken away in the end. They're like, actually, now you're magical and you get to live forever. So I think that's kind of lame. It kind of relates to this overall theme of a problem that I have with the book, which is that it becomes a little bit too simple in a way. So I think Sarah J. Maas does this thing where she explains too much and she makes problems go away very fast. She will have the characters explain, especially Feyre, she explains her inner monologue, her thinking a lot, instead of us just witnessing it and figuring out what the character might feel. And she also has the characters a lot do exposition dumps where they're just like, I'm just going to explain the entire story to you right now in the story, which is lame. So a really good example of this is on chapter 32. Chapter 32 is where Feyre comes back to the mansion and Alice is talking to her. And the entire chapter 32 is just exposition dump. It's literally just Alice talking. It was such a boring chapter. Like, it's interesting. The story of how they got cursed is interesting, but this needed to be laced throughout the whole story. So the first half of the book is just love story, basically. And so throughout that love story, yes, we got a couple of little hints that were wrapped up in the end very nicely, but I just feel like this entire story should have been hinted at the entire time instead of just waiting until chapter 32 when she has to go do something about it. Alice is literally going through the entire story of like, well, you should have broken the curse. And Feyre's like, what curse? She's like, the curse to fall in love with Tamlin, obviously, duh. She's like, well, I didn't know that. And she's like, well, he was cursed by Amarantha 50 years ago, and it was at the ball. And then she tells the entire story of Amarantha's sister. And then she goes, yeah, and so now everybody's powers are gone and you were the key. And instead of saying that you loved Tamlin, you ran away and now you're back and now you have to go under the mountain. And here's exactly how you get under the mountain and exactly what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, oh my God, shut up. We needed to hear this story in fewer words. It would have been more impactful if she very barely gave us the bare bones reason for the curse. And then throughout Feyre's journey under the mountain, she could have figured out the rest of the story. Am I right? So if Alice was just like, you were the key to the curse, if you go under the mountain, you may be able to break the curse. Then she goes under the mountain. She learns all of the details slowly from other fairies, from Lucian, from Rhysand, about the ball, about the sister, about Jurian, about all this other stuff. And I think that would have been much more satisfying if we got little itty bitty crumbs sprinkled throughout the whole book, and then it would have been so much cooler when she put all the pieces together instead of all the pieces coming together for her in chapter 32 specifically. And Sarah J. Maas also does this thing that really annoys me, that the characters will just explain way too much, almost as if the audience won't figure it out or is dumb. And I understand where that's coming from. When I write my screenplays, I worry that the reader is going to be like, I have no idea what she's talking about. And so sometimes I feel like I need to make my characters say everything that they mean so that the reader knows. But I know, as somebody who enjoys reading, watching movies, I enjoy putting pieces together, solving mysteries. I enjoy coming up with my own interpretation of things and how the characters might feel about these things. I enjoy doing that. And so I have to be able to give credit to my audience that they can figure it out. They're not stupid. And so Sarah J. Maas will over-explain everything. And I will give you a direct example from the book. So there's this sentence that's way too long and way too wordy that Alice says on page number 287. Yes, I wrote down page numbers. So she says to Feyre, I would not be surprised if she sent her minions into the human realm to investigate your strengths and weaknesses in anticipation for the destructions she one day hopes to cause. Which is a really, really long sentence of saying, I wouldn't be surprised if she sent her people over the wall to spy on you. And this is just one example of this thing that happens constantly throughout the book. Another thing Sarah J. Maas does in her writing that absolutely just pisses me off, she puts ellipses everywhere. Every single page of this novel has ellipses. What are they confused about? Especially if you think about the book is written from the perspective of Feyre in the past. She's talking about these events have already happened to me in the past. She's recalling the story. What is she, in her retelling of the story, what is she hesitant about? What is she pausing about? What is, like, I know she's trying to, like, build this dramatic tension, but it happens so much that it doesn't feel like dramatic tension anymore. It just feels like lame. It seems like something like old people love to use ellipses when they're trying to be dramatic, and that's what it feels like. It feels like kind of cheap to me in a way. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And another thing she does besides ellipses, if it's not ellipses, it's a dash. So Feyre will be like in the middle of a sentence that she's recalling, mind you, not even that she's speaking out loud, that she's recalling, and she'll be like, it could be, no, it couldn't be, but yes, perhaps. And it has all those like dashes, and I'm like, but you're recalling the story. Like, you wouldn't talk to your friend about a story that you're recalling, that you remember. You wouldn't write down in your diary or your memoir a story like that. And even when she's speaking, so the characters do it a lot too, and it feels very unnatural to me. Like, sometimes I would try to read it in a different tone that would make more sense for the ellipses and for the dashes, and they just seem very unnecessary. And I think it would honestly be stronger and more dramatic if characters got right to the point, instead of being like, well, yes, but also I don't know. Some characters, if you have an opinion, they should just say no. End of sentence. Not every character needs to ponder and second guess, because that should maybe be for a character who, like Feyre, is new to this world, doesn't understand the fairy world, has so many questions, is so confused. Whereas stronger characters who are supposed to be sure of themselves, like Tamlin, should never use ellipses, because they're supposed to be strong. They're supposed to know what they're talking about. Rhysand should never use ellipses, because he's supposed to be like the most confident character, the most charismatic. He never second guesses. He's does things of his own volition, so he would never talk that way. So I don't understand why she puts it in the book all over the place. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. I think another criticism I have to kind of talk about is Rhysand. I liked the character. I thought he was very interesting, but I think I'm a little bit confused about his role. So women love to call Rhysand Shadow Daddy because he like melts into shadows. Women love to call him Shadow Daddy. Maybe in the second book, which I haven't started reading yet, maybe, you know, he becomes more of a lovable character. In the first book, I really wanted to like him, but then he does things that I find to be cringy. If you've ever watched like motorcycle TikTok, the TikToks of the guys who have a motorcycle and they put on a helmet and then they try to like do these like sexy dance moves where they grind on their bike and they're like, yeah, daddy's home and he's riding his motorcycle, like where they try to do that like cringe sexy thing. That's what Rhysand feels like, and I don't want him to feel that way. So Rhysand is supposed to be this character who is mysterious and dark, and he's mischievous, but he's also very suave. He's very handsome. He's very charismatic. He is an interesting character. His dynamic with Feyre is very interesting, in that, yes, he's helping her. At the same time, he's going to take from her. But at the same time, so much has been taken from him. He wants to save his people. He's an interesting character. He's complicated. But he feels a little bit cringe to me, in that he's very possessive. It just doesn't really feel like it fits sometimes. Sometimes the sexiness kind of feels like something Sarah J. Maas wanted to do to make the book feel sexier and smuttier. And sometimes I feel like it doesn't really fit with the story, and he's kind of like cringe at times. He's kind of like, princess, let me take care of you, and you're mine now. That's kind of what he feels like to me sometimes. And I think overall it makes the story feel a bit fan fiction-y, which is a complaint I have about a lot of different forms of media. But this especially, it feels kind of like a Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon / Twilight fan fiction kind of thing. It's like a little bit over dramatic sometimes, or like sometimes it's a little bit on the nose, in that I want more to be left up to interpretation and to let me feel how I feel. So one of the very best books that I've read so far this year in my reading journey was called A Wild Sheep Chase. A Wild Sheep Chase is a very mysterious book. It really does not reveal anything to you until the end, and even in the end, you still have questions. So it's about a man. He has a kind of very unsatisfying life. He is getting a divorce from his wife. He needs to find meaning. He's just very lost. It's very a character-driven story where he recalls his past. He reflects on his present. He reflects on who he is as a person. He has this sense of nostalgia where he wishes things were the way that they were when he was young. And in the end, he learns to accept that things always change. He has to try to be happy for the present, right? So I like that kind of story where I get to come up with what it means to me. To me, he's reflecting on these things because this is what he feels. He doesn't really always tell us how he feels. Sometimes he just kind of describes things that happen. Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, the television shows, I've never read the books, are so strong to me because all of these elements have been woven throughout time. We kind of know the history of these people, the history that happened in season 1 all of a sudden comes back in season 4, and now dots are connected. Like, it takes a long time, and that's what I prefer. And instead, everything in this book is spelled out for me in a very obvious fashion. And it also just, like, it feels like too chummy and too good to be true. Yes, like, her morality has been forever changed by killing fairies and by going through the journey that she has, but other than that, I mean, her life is pretty damn good. She gets to live. She gets to be a fairy. She gets to be immortal. She gets to be magical. She gets to be with Tamlin. Tamlin loves her. She gets to save everybody. Like, it's a lot of good things that happen. And for there to be a second book and for it to be a series, I wanted to be left on a bit more of a cliffhanger where things are unresolved and people are unhappy, and it would have made the second book all that more enticing. There's just like a lot of contradictions. So, like, for example, when Feyre first gets to Under the Mountain, even though Alice tells her everybody's there against their will, people are being tortured, everybody there doesn't like her because she's a human, I guess. So they all hate her and they're all booing for her. They all want her to fail in these trials. They're betting against her. And then at the very end, when she's on her last trial, all of a sudden, all of fairies like her. They're doing this gesture, she says, on page 386, where they kind of like go like this, and they're like, it's a gesture, she says, to like wish her luck in battle. And I'm like, well, why all of a sudden do they like her? And she even mentions, she's like, she knows that their fate rests on her, and that if she's able to defeat this trial, all of them will be set free from the curse of Amarantha. It doesn't explain enough of a shift in their attitude to warrant the all of a sudden, oh, they love her and they know that their fate depends on her.
Guys, I was right. I was going to say something about it in the video, but then I thought maybe I was wrong, but I'm right. I'm reading A Court of Mist and Fury. Just started it. Page 1 of A Court of Mist and Fury says, I quote, "Her deep red hair," talking about Amarantha, "as bright as the blood on my hands." Now, there was a point in A Court of Thorns and Roses, I know there was, near the end, where Feyre described her hair as being like black as a raven or something, saying that she had black hair. So which is it, Sarah J. Maas? Does she have black hair or does she have red hair? You can't flip-flop back and forth.
And then finally, in the end, when she is saved by all the High Lords, I also wish that was just drawn out more. It all happens in like less than a full chapter. Feyre is being tortured by Amarantha. Amarantha is killed. All the fairies cheer. She's healed and becomes a fairy herself. All of those very major elements happen in the same chapter, and it's just too much and happens too fast, and it makes the resolution of the story feel way too fast. Like a very common complaint with the last season of Game of Thrones. Like, just too much is put in there to try to tie everything up. Here's where I will get into what I liked about the story. So, Feyre didn't always win and didn't always know how to do things. She still couldn't read. She still couldn't figure it out. She still needed the help of Rhysand, which she didn't want to do. She needed to rely on other people. And she changed her mind about things. She's not a perfect hero. She's done many things wrong. She's done many stupid things. But in the end, she still, overcomes. And I kind of like that. I wish there were more stakes, as you know, as I've said. But I like that there were real stakes that felt real, that felt like she could fail. It felt like, things could go poorly for her, and so many, a variety of different outcomes could happen. I felt like Sarah J. Maas did a very good job of doing that. I liked the change from when Feyre comes home and she kind of sees her sisters in a different light. So the beginning of the book, she complains about her sisters a lot. They are very much a burden on her, even though she loves her family and she's sworn to protect them. But when she comes home, she realizes, like, Elaine is sweet. She's innocent. She is a child, but she's not a fool. Elaine is smart. She's aware of what's happening. She knows that her family has been in dire straits. She knows that, her father's misdoings have led to their fate, but she tries to keep everybody positive. And that's something Feyre realizes for the first time. Nesta, she realizes, yes, she's grumpy and annoying, but she is a very angry person because she's the oldest of them. Really, she was kind of supposed to be promised this good life, and yet so many things have been taken away from her, and it doesn't really even seem like her dad can be brave enough and be man enough and take care of his family enough to try to right things. And so that has changed the course of her whole life too. I like that change. I like that there were some Black people up in there. I always like a fantasy book that has a fantasy story that has Black people in it, because for some reason people love to imagine like fantasy characters and wizards and fairies and stuff as only white, which is lame. So yeah, just like in House of the Dragon, where they have some Black Targaryens, Alice is probably supposed to be Black, which, by the way, I couldn't think of that in my mind when I was picturing her. Like, I was confused when they were like, she had skin like bark, and I was like, what? And I had to look up a picture of her, and I was like, oh my god, she's supposed to be brown. I'm so dumb. Some of the Summer Court High Lords are also Black. So yeah, that was pretty awesome. I don't know why I like that so much, but I just do. I like the love story. I thought it was a sweet love story. And I also like that this book has a sweet love story, but our main character is not just a fool. So about halfway through the book, I was like, oh my god, all she's doing is like being pampered by Tamlin, and she's always like, oh, I'm not sure, I have to go take care of my family, but also I love Tamlin so much and things are so much better for me now. And like, she has a little bit of inner conflict, but I'm like, well, pretty much your life is pretty easy now and you got it made for you. But when Feyre gets to be a hero in the end and go through all of these obstacles and make all of these tough deals and really get down and dirty, I really like that. And she gets to be the savior to her man, instead of the other way around, where the man just gets to save her and she gets to have a happy, little life. And so I like that. I like that it's not just a little like Beauty and the Beast kind of Cinderella story where a girl gets swept up into this beautiful world and she has a beautiful life. She actually has to fight for things and fight for what she believes in, which is cool. So I really like that as well. Overall, guys, I really liked the story. I thought it was really interesting. I have never really read a fantasy book before. And, with all the criticisms that I gave, I'm going to read the second book. I'm going to read the whole series. I would love to see this be made into a movie one day. And you know what else? It leads me to another discussion. We need to stop being annoying about women reading like books with sex in it. I think, men like to watch their sex, women like to read it, and it's not just a book about nothing. It's a book that has substance and story, and that's why so many women love it, because it's not just a simple love story, romance story. It's a story about fighting for what you believe in, overcoming, changing your mind about things, trying to be a better person, and fighting for the people that you love. And I also have to say, so I think even if sometimes the media isn't maybe the most highbrow, people can still enjoy it. So think about, for example, like The Real Housewives or Jersey Shore or Keeping Up with the Kardashians. All of us kind of have our guilty pleasure about things that we like to watch on TV. Maybe they're not the most thoughtful productions. They're not Oscar worthy. They're not the most intellectually stimulating media. But I don't think that means that for enjoying it, that makes you like, less informed or stupid or lowbrow or unclassy or something. I think that's really lame when people kind of try to be like, well, actually, you should be reading this book. Or you know what else is annoying? When people are enjoying something or reading a book or watching a movie that they like, and maybe it is a little bit more off the beaten path, people are like, now they're doing it performatively. Is ACOTAR the most highbrow book, the most thought-provoking book? No. I don't care. It's still good. I'm still going to read it. Is The Real Housewives of New Jersey the most stimulating show? No. But if you watch it, I don't think that makes you dumb and classless. I think we all just like to have our fun little shows. And I think all of us in reality like drama and like simple things like romance and revenge and drama. I think that's fun. I think we all kind of like that. It's really not that serious at the end of the day. I think something that I think about a lot is like, for some reason, everybody like wants to be really serious about their opinions. And yes, I am serious about my opinions. I share my opinions. I can be a bit of a snob when it comes to media. But it's all in good fun, We're allowed to all watch dumb things for fun. I'm allowed to hate on things that other people like for fun. Being a hater is fun sometimes, but it's also fun to think about things that are more complicated. I think it's great that people do have these very critical analyses of media and what does it mean when we watch this, what does it mean for the culture, what does it show us, what does it tell us. I think we should always do that, but also don't be an asshole and let me read my book. I know you've all been dying for it. Now is my time to do a fan cast of all of the main characters of A Court of Thorns and Roses. Yes, I know you have been waiting for this very moment. So first of all, I have to start out strong. It's only fitting. Rhysand, in the book, he was described as pale with beautiful black raven hair, beautiful purple eyes, mysterious, very handsome, very alluring. Who else could that be but the one and only Adam Driver? I love Adam Driver. Everybody makes fun of me, my family, my friends. They goof on me for this. I think Adam Driver is one of the most handsome men that I have ever seen in my life. He's gorgeous. He's in a Burberry ad. He is the face of Burberry men. I think he would be the perfect Rhysand. He would never, I don't think, ever sign on to an adaptation of A Court of Thorns and Roses, the movie, but it has to be said. Now, who would play Feyre? This is going to be a controversial take, but I have to say it. I think Emilia Clarke would be a great Feyre. I just like to imagine her as that. I liked her as Daenerys Targaryen. So Feyre, she has brown hair, obviously. So it would be Emilia Clarke with brown hair, but very similar to how she would look in Game of Thrones, like similarly dressed, I think, like in the earlier seasons especially, but with brown hair. Obviously Emilia Clarke is like a grown woman now, and Feyre's only supposed to be like 19. But if we went back to her early Game of Thrones days, she would be perfect. Now, you may be wondering who would play Tamlin. This is my most controversial one. Who would play Tamlin? It would be Ross Lynch, guys. Okay, now who is Ross Lynch? You may be wondering. Honestly, Ross Lynch, I don't even think he really does anything these days. He was a Disney Channel famous child. But when I saw him in the One of Your Girls music video, the One of Your Girls Troye Sivan music video a couple years ago, I said, oh my God. He has beautiful golden hair. He's muscular. He's tall. He's handsome. He's charming. He would be the perfect Tamlin. Now, I have heard that Ross Lynch may be a Republican. I don't know if that's true or not. I literally don't know anything else about Ross Lynch besides the fact that he's handsome. If he's a terrible person, I don't know. But that's just who I like to imagine in my little mind. Now, who would play Alice? Alice, for me, is very complicated. As I said, I'm stupid. In my brain, when I first imagined Alice, I kind of imagined her almost as like the human version of Mrs. Potts from Beauty and the Beast. I imagined her being like, oh, hello, dearie, and like kind of being like plump and sweet and old. And then it really had me thinking, like, who would play her? I think Denai Guerrera would be a great choice. I forgot to put it in my video recording, but I think like she's almost too fine to play her, because I imagined her as like an old lady, but she is very strong and powerful, as we saw in her role in Black Panther. And I think she would look really cool if she had like some cool like gray silvery dreads. And she's also just so elegant. Like, look at her. She looks like a fairy in this picture. She looks like a goddess. For Lucien was kind of hard for me to pin down. Weirdly, I thought about the guy from Game of Thrones who has red hair and the big red beard. I don't think Lucien is described as having a big red beard. So as I was getting further into the story and I learned more descriptions of him, I was like, actually, my imagining of him is probably wrong, but that's just how I imagine him throughout the whole book. So maybe him, but again, like younger, obviously, with maybe longer hair or something like that. Now, Amarantha, this is a casting that I think is actually perfect. Yes, Elizabeth Hurley. I think Elizabeth Hurley would be the perfect Amarantha. She has that beautiful accent that sounds kind of like everything she says is like a little bit of an insult or like an inside joke. And in Bedazzled, she really plays this kind of character really well, where she is very sexy and she's very enticing, but also, I mean, to her everything is like a joke and everything is so funny, and she's very smug, and I think she would be a perfect Amarantha. The actor, I mean, it could be Willem Dafoe. He could pull off some prosthetics. Willem Dafoe can devour any role that he's in, so he would be perfect for anything. Cast him as anybody, he would be great. So those are the major players. Let me know who your fan casts were for A Court of Thorns and Roses. Now, I haven't read the second book. Don't ruin the second book for me. I'm on the verge of being able to start reading it. Let me know what you thought about my analysis of A Court of Thorns and Roses. I had a lot to say. I did a lot of rambling and yapping, but I hope you enjoyed this video. I really would enjoy to hear what other people think about this book and think about the characters. I would love to see you next time on the Unemployed Movie Critic YouTube channel, where surely next time I will be talking about a movie and not a book, and I'm going to get back to my cinema roots. Thank you for joining me.